good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Academy XI's International Women's Day panel. We are thrilled to have you join us today, and the topic for today is the future of work, critical AI skills for leadership. So my name is Nicola Christopherson, and I'll be your host today. And first, I want to acknowledge International Women's Day, a day where we celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women around the world, and reflect on the work still yet to be done for gender equality, particularly in emerging fields such as technology and AI. But if you're anything like one of our panelists, Huyen Lee, every day is International Women's Day, as she likes to remind her husband constantly. So I like that, Huyen. I'm right there with you. And for those who may be new to us, Academy XI is a leading education and advisory organisation, and we help individuals and businesses build future-ready skills. So our mission is to empower people with practical hands-on learning so they can confidently navigate the rapidly evolving workplace. And today's session is designed to highlight the intersection of women in leadership and AI. We'll explore how AI is reshaping leadership, workforce capability and decision-making, and what skills and strategies leaders need to thrive in this new landscape. So as AI continues to transform industries, it's not just about automating tasks. It's redefining how leaders make decisions, collaborate with their teams, and plan for the future. The ability to leverage AI effectively is becoming a critical leadership skill, and it's essential that women are equipped and empowered to take on opportunities that that shape the future of work. So a few housekeeping things before we dive in. You will see a chat box, so please feel free to put any comments in the chat box. We also will be having room at the end for Q&A, so put in any questions within there as well. The session will go for about 40 minutes, and we'll leave 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. Also, this session is being recorded, so if you would like the recording post-session, please reach out to us and we can provide that to you. And we encourage everyone today just to have fun. So we've got a really fun group of panelists today, which I'm so excited about. But take notes and just enjoy the conversation. And with that, let's get started. So I'd like to kick things off by inviting our panelists to introduce themselves. Can you each briefly tell us who you are and what you do? We'll start with you, Natasha.
Hi, everyone, and lovely to meet you all and be celebrating International Women's Day, or as Nicola and Huyen have said, we should be celebrating it every day. So I'm Natasha. I'm really privileged to be the Chief Experience Officer at Academy XI as one of their experts in residence. And then I'm also Managing Director at Scyne Advisory, where I run their national design practice and work in digital transformation and AI. A little bit about me. I was really honored last year to be on the Women in Leadership for AFR, and really excited to be part of that list as one of the consulting women leaders that was recognised. I am someone who's always been quite young to be in senior leadership positions. And so I feel like as we talk about equality and we talk about supporting women, we need to think about many different layers of inclusion. But I think it's amazing some of the things that we're doing in order to improve gender equality and equality more broadly. I'll hand over to Alice.
Hi everyone, such a privilege to be here and a hard act to follow from Natasha's self-intro. I spent 24 years in corporate, and when I turned 40, I decided I don't want to be an accountant anymore. So I went on an uncovering journey and started career coaching and still juggle parenthood and a corporate job, a senior executive position. And at the age of 45, I decided it's now or never. So I started doing my full-time coaching business. And more recently, I decided I need to duplicate or multiply myself because I've hit a wall in terms of scaling my business. So I started Suitorly, an AI-powered coaching platform where I'm going to hopefully change the landscape in terms of hiring, the skills mapping for the future. And now, as a parent raising a 19-year-old daughter, I'm very passionate about giving her all the skill sets she needs to venture out there as a woman in business. So I'm very privileged to be here to share my story. So thank you. Hand over to Huyen.
Thanks, Alice. It's very hard to follow you both. And so I start with I have two boys at home, so every day for me is International Women's Day. My background is as an immigrant. I also here in Australia 20 plus years ago without revealing my age as an international student, studying and working here since then. I have two boys, 20 years old and 15 years old, so I can relate to you, Alice, in terms of raising sort of turn out to be adults soon for that. Now, I currently work in Medibank and focus on work architecture in HR division, and it's about thinking about how work flows through to the ecosystem, how organizations should be designed and structured, and more importantly, how people are set up to thrive. Right, I spent 20 plus years in transformation across ANZ. So prior to joining Medibank, I was with Toll Group Logistics, and then most of my career at ANZ. First 10 years with ANZ was very much in process engineering, technology implementation, involving a fair bit of Asia Pacific division to opening branches and businesses across Asia Pacific. Last 10 years of ANZ, I was in HR, really discovering my passion around how to make the difference. And particularly as immigrants and women in leadership team as well, like how can we pass on the knowledge to our younger generation? Boy or girl, doesn't matter. What are the key principles I wish that I would known back then, and rather than now. So when I look at AI, it's always through the lens of people, cultures, particularly from employee experience perspective and change. So I can't wait to share with you some of my thoughts today. Back to you, Nicola.
Thank you so much, everyone. And I completely resonate with that as well, Huyen, in terms of future generations. I mean, AI is shaping our culture right now, but certainly it's going to be different for our future generations. So it's so good we're having conversations like this now. And I'm pregnant halfway, so I am, I am breeding a generation who will be completely surrounded by AI. So these are important questions to have, and more discussions, I should say. And I think it's always powerful to start with the human side of the journey, because behind every leadership role is a story of challenge and also growth. So with that, let's begin with our first question. And I might start with you, Huyen. Again, I'll hand over to you. What were some of the biggest challenges or biases you faced as a woman in a tech or AI-dominated environment, and how did you navigate them?
Oh, great questions. I was fortunate enough to work in the tech world with great leaders, men leaders, and I've learned a lot. But I do notice a few key elements that I think I would love to share. Is that the biggest area for us? I don't want just to separate out women, so to speak, but it is, or the barriers are AI it's not about access to the tools. It's it's at our fingertip, right? But it's a belief that AI is someone else's domain. So for women, for example, we think about AI is someone else's domain. And sometimes it's not a training matter, it's actually a culture matter in the organization. So from my point of view, firstly, do you have in the organization you work in, do you have that culture where employee experience is actually the foundation of inclusion, right? And is a day-to-day conversation is inclusive, so we'll feel part of it, right? Part of my passion is also teaching. So I teach at MIT online course and face-to-face and campus with an MBA program. So I had a privilege to interact a lot with our colleagues who spend time at day in corporate and at night actually studying. So there's a lot of sharing there. It's not about training. It's not about not knowing. It's about is an organization I'm working in is actually open for learning and open for that inclusive conversation. And more importantly, we need to reframe AI as a business skill, not a tech skill. All right. I at first I thought, oh, AI, yeah, ChatGPT. That's the first thing that came to my mind. But it's not. We need to really answer the question, what is AI and what is not, what AI is not, and then be able to determine that. So I think the thing is reframing AI as a business skill and not a tech skill, so that we can remove that barrier for perception, right? As AI is just technology. It's not. And then the cultures and the EX element of it is a psychological safety for people to feel it is okay to have an open conversation about it. The EX is the trust, it's a curiosity, and we as women feel safe to do so, right? And so really just want to summarize that curiosity, people-centered purpose, and the right questions. That's kind of my point of view.
Brilliant, thank you. Tash, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure, happy to. I think there's a couple of things in there. I think your passion for teaching, Huyen, quite similar to myself. I was a facilitator with Academy XI for almost a decade, I think it was. I think I hit 7 or 8 years. But before that, I was actually a primary school teacher and I was a primary school music teacher. So I think what was really interesting for me is I came from an industry that was overpopulated with women, and we were trying to get more males into that particular career in order to make sure we had that diversity with our students and who they were learning and growing from. Then from there, I moved into a small consulting firm that was predominantly male dominated, and they were quite cognizant of that. And so they made a conscious decision to hire females into that particular organization to try and bridge the gap. What was really interesting in that, though, was that we had a lot of male leaders because they'd been more senior, had been around the company for a while. And then we had a lot of female juniors who were then being brought in order to get that diversity perspective. But there was a bit of a disconnect in terms of the power that was distributed in that company. And so I think in that particular example, we made some really cognizant efforts to think about how we were making sure that people had different opinions and brought them to the table. And I think that's a learning we can sort of take forward as we see the growth of AI and technology today, because as Huyen said, it's not really just a tech decision. And actually one of the biggest pitfalls that a company can make is saying that AI should be owned by the technology lead. It shouldn't be. It should be owned by the business lead, because we need to identify the right use cases. We need to understand what problem we're actually solving and then make a decision as to whether AI is the right decision. And I think for me in my journey, I've always been someone, with a teaching background and then sort of human-centered design. I have been in those more female-dominated roles. As I started to move into more of tech and business consulting and being in those male-dominated roles, I often get that imposter syndrome, being like, oh, what am I doing here? What am I contributing? But actually, I'm contributing that business mindset. I'm contributing that diversity of thought. And in parallel, I'm building my own skills and my own career by understanding what AI, what technology trends are happening and how I can upskill myself to be able to contribute more meaningfully.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. What really stands out, I think, is you both mentioned that it's not about technology. It's really about business. And I'd love to continue on that theme in terms of an organizational perspective rather than now just an individual experience. So my next question for you all is, AI is reshaping the future of work. We all know that. Yet women remain underrepresented in AI learning and leadership opportunities. And it's great to hear, Tash, that your previous business made a concerted effort to change that, but a lot of businesses don't. So what can organisations and leaders do to create more accessible inclusive, and empowering pathways for women to upskill and thrive in AI. I might hand to you first, Alice.
I personally have had really lucky times in corporate where my male leaders were very inclusive, especially because I'm Asian heritage. So fortunately, I haven't had exclusion in my experience, but I feel that now coaching many people out there, I do agree with both Cash and Huyen that it is a tool. So at the end of the day, a tool is only as good as the people. So if we were to double down on the humanistic side, the EI side is definitely to put that on the agenda where all of us should keep elevating our EQ is my first opinion. Second of all, as leaders, I think women in positions, the leadership team should then encourage the other male leaders on that leadership team to try and diversify and actually help everyone uplift their EQ skills, but now equip them with the tools in AI to actually do both things at the same time, because the tools are going to generate a lot of efficiency for us. What's going to be missed is the humanistic side where empathetic leadership comes in. How do we manage the workforce as we transform redundancies potentially, or reskilling, redeployment, and really help people regardless of your gender and where you're from? How are we going to redeploy people and leverage their strengths? That's really my opinion, is including everybody. Everybody's got strengths, right? In my line of work, people come to me and go, I don't have any strengths. I'm not good at this and I'm not good at that. So instead of focusing on our weaknesses, which is what corporates tend to do in those performance appraisals, let's face it, what are you not good at? Let's put a plan in and fix those things. Why don't we start having conversations around what are you really good at? Let's leverage those strengths. And in the world of new AI, let's redeploy those strengths so that people are happier. Because let's face it, we don't want to go to work and keep getting hammered on what are you not good at? Let's switch the conversation to go, what are you really good at? Let's find work and create a role for each individual to leverage your strengths. So I feel that's what I would define as inclusive employment, rather than focusing on people's weaknesses, no matter what gender you are. That's my opinion.
I think AI can help you do that to an extent as well. Like I know at Scyne, we just built something using AI, which is called a skills passport. And essentially what it is people can populate, what their skills are based on different projects, but then it can start suggesting, oh, well, have you thought about these particular courses that can help you upskill in these areas? Or your peers seem to have a lot of skills in this. Do you want to add this skill as well? Or actually thinking about the workforce of the future, you might want to consider these types of skills. Or did you see that this project's happening that you could possibly get involved in based on your background? So I think some of the things that AI is creating changes in the workforce, it can also help you accelerate your career and identify where those gaps are. But I think the underlying tone is that we should be using AI for good and to help accelerate those conversations rather than just thinking about how AI is creating some of those redundancies.
Brilliant. Thank you both. And I love the focus on access and opportunity, because inclusion ultimately shapes who gets to influence the future, right? And as AI continues to evolve, leadership itself is being redefined, and we're having these discussions and having a look at what leadership attributes people really do need to have to thrive in this new world. So we have touched on this next question, but Huyen would love to see what you have to add. And it's, how do you think AI is redefining leadership, and what can leaders do to adapt to its impact on workforce transformation?
Thanks, Nicola. This is a passion of mine, and I think the webinar is too short for me to talk through, but we start. I want to actually show you something on screen. This is the new book, The AI-Driven Leader. And why I show this, it's actually coming just before Christmas, we were reflecting on the year come at Medibank. I was still a newbie at Medibank, but I listened to the leadership team sharing, and the chief customers officer bought this book for his team and said, look, this is not about me giving you a book to say to learn learn about AI, but it also about it's called the book called The AI Driven Leader by Jeff Woods. And it just got published last year in 2024, so relatively new. And in this, I haven't finished it yet, I just only up to chapter 3. But in this book, one of the things that stuck with me so far is it says strategy first, technology second. And strategies is what we as humans think of, and we use AI to elaborate on some of those skills. So that critical thinking and that human elements is still is critical throughout, AI or not AI. And in my role at ANZ, managing more teams from different countries, because ANZ representation is about 30 countries in the world. The bit where I constantly share with my team is permanent roles nowadays no longer permanent. There's nothing as such as permanent. So what we can do is what makes us remain relevant, right? So, and what's your purpose? I'm sure you know the famous guy Simon Sinek, start with why, right? And I constantly go back, what do you do? What you analyze? You touch on it, the UQ size of it. What makes what is your leadership, right? And what is your purpose? And then get AI to help you achieve that. If it's not clear your purpose and your values, but in my opinion, AI would just noise, or you just go with trends and it ticks in the box. And in organization, people go, oh, we have to do something with AI. Well, what problem are you trying to solve? And what are the business values going to come out of that? Then we can talk about AI. So the AI conversation, let's not start with what AI solution we're going to build. Let's start with what outcomes we're actually going to achieve and why we're here, personally, and why do we exist in an organization. I'm sure Academy XI has a purpose, has a mission. I'm sure, Natasha's, your organizations also have, but that is very purposeful. So when you determine what AI solution, as a leader, you do need to be really clear on the missions, on the purpose. And in the book, it's also say AI shift the leadership from doing to enabling, and really even more so your influencing skill in this world of actually lead your people to adoption. How can you create that culture for people to really learn? Fail fast, we call it at ANZ, fail fast and learn from it and move on. And one of the books that I probably recommend, it's quite controversial. I didn't like it in the first place, but you probably heard about it. It's a good podcast too. It's the Diary of the CEO. There are 33 rules, and I thought, 33 rules is too much already. You need 3 rules. But as I listened to the podcast and read the book, there's some really good controversial point out there that really make you nowadays think, we need to start shifting your thinking. And lastly, I would say it's not about changing who you are. It's not about changing how you interact, but it's about also making conscious choice about how AI can help you, how AI can help your team, and how AI can enable the business outcomes or organization outcome or your personal needs to some degree before you decide what AI works for you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We have heard about influencing and emotional intelligence are really important leadership capabilities that are required today. But if we shift to AI related skills, I'd love to hear from all of you in terms of, in your opinion, what are the top 3, so not 33, Huyen, 3 top AI related skills that leaders need to develop today to stay competitive in 2026? Tash, would you like to kick off?
Sure, I can kick off. I'm going to reframe it slightly, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
And thinking not so much just about your AI skills, but thinking about your AI tools. And when I say tools, I don't mean technologies, I mean things to put in your toolkit. So I think the number one thing that we need to understand from an AI perspective is what are the risks and governance and controls that we need to put in place to have effective and safe AI. So that's really the first thing I would think about. And there's some really good sort of frameworks and guidance out there published by the Australian government on sort of the use of AI through to other sort of AI standards which are coming out of the UK and Singapore that you can have a bit of a look at to understand what those things are. But I think the first is, understanding that risk and governance is really, really important. I think the second is then around that problem solving skill or mindset and being able to identify use cases. So looking at what is the problem at hand and then what is then possible solutions where AI could increase productivity or could give time back to the user. And then I think the third is don't be afraid of AI, lean into it. And so just having a basic understanding of what AI is, what are the key technologies that are used, and have a go. Just get into an AI tool, go beyond just using your AI chat, try and build a Gemini notebook, try and build an agent that can help you automate one task. And so I think the third is really that practical use of AI and just willingness to have a go. So I don't know if those are three skills or three things for your toolkit, but the first being sort of the risk controls and governance and having something that you can roll out and understand. The second really being about that problem mindset and use case identification. And the third being that sort of willingness to have a go and having that basic understanding of AI technologies that are being used today.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tash. And it's so important as well. Alice, what would you say in terms of, say, for your toolkit or AI-related skills?
First of all, I'd like to say we've been talking about how leadership teams can help us upskill, but I also want to put that responsibility back onto the individual, because at the end of the day, no one cares about our careers as much as us, not even our spouse and partners. I always put it back onto the person as I'm coaching. So that's probably the first statement I want to make. And then the three skills I feel is quite critical to stay relevant is definitely, first of all, that discernment or having critical thinking, not trusting AI as much as we do. We see a lot of cutting and pasting and sloppy work, but really going through the output and go, does it make sense? Let's challenge what AI is saying and then have a full-on conversation with it and really challenging it, but also apply your own critical thinking. Is this right? Is this wrong? So before AI, we all have to sit there before we submit to our deadlines. Does this make sense? So I really want us to all think, question at every prompt. That leads me to the second skill, which is prompt engineering. But honestly, to be honest, it's just asking good questions, being curious, because your input will determine your output. So if you don't ask it right, like reframe this email, is not going to be as powerful as breaking it up, going context, objective, the task, and my expected output. So that framing is going to generate a much better output than just reframe my email. And the number three skill, I think it's definitely having, I go back to EI. EI is where I go to because I feel AI times EI is where you're really going to leverage and compound your skill sets, is definitely just being human and talking to AI like you would with a conversation. You can also remove the emotions as well. So you can ask AI to, don't be emotional, let's be objective, or now apply some of that emotions in there. And how would I approach this difficult conversation if you were me and I know this person is XYZ? So a little bit of a controversial thing there, but I often think when you ask AI to be a little bit more applying that EQ, sometimes you get very different answers, but you need to be highly emotionally intelligent first in order to train AI to be highly emotionally intelligent as well. So they might three key skills.
Brilliant. And Huyen, was there anything you'd like to add as well?
Just one small part. I absolutely agree with Natasha and Alice. I would probably just re-emphasize on two elements of it. One is the continuous learning mindset, right? If you got it wrong the first time, so what? Do it again. And having a bit of that learning resilience in you as well. And I think the other thing I would like to say is we don't need to know it all, right? We don't need to have all the answers. But then how can you find SMEs and expertise and continuously to learn? And one thing I found that really beneficial for myself, reverse coaching. So, and what I mean by that is we coach a lot as the people leader, as the teacher at university, and I also have clients. I also have coaching others as well. But sometimes the moment of reverse coaching have someone younger or in different field, completely outside of your comfort zone, to actually have the conversation and reverse coach you in a sense. It actually unlock your perspective. Sometimes I hear things, I'm like, oh my God, I did not think like that. And how does that work for me and others? It worked well. So if you haven't tried reverse coaching, give it a go. And in this AI world, I found I've learned a lot more from younger generation and learn what not to do, but also actually give me insights on how can I help guiding as an educator, as an advisor. So it actually works really well. That's probably something I would say in the AI stage. Learn as much as you can from different group of audience or user group or persona, however you want to call it, and use it to your advantage in a positive way, like continuous learning, changing your approach, and communication, communication, and communication. Your narrative is important, your influencing is important, particularly if you are the people leader. Yeah, that's what I would like to add.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And what I love about each of your answers is that you haven't just highlighted the three skills, but you've also provided those practical strategies as well of how people can actually get involved and apply those skills, and what they can go out and do within their workplace. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much. Another question that I have, and I'll throw to you first, Alice, is how can leaders empower their teams to effectively leverage AI in the workplace or in their roles?
Definitely allowing headspace. Speaking to many corporates, and as I'm training and facilitating with Academy Scyne, I'm out there talking to senior leadership team and team members. The first thing they usually throw back at us is how can we juggle doing our day-to-day, closing the gap on the P&L because we're short on budget, and allow time to actually train ourselves up. Because I think what I'm seeing is the leadership team go, we must train our workforce to be AI literate. And they just throw it out there without the time or guidance or actually spending time together to actually do it. I think that will be the biggest challenge. So my first thing is maybe give your team some headspace, allocate the time and carve out that investment, because we think we can't do it all in one day. We've already got enough stress in our daily lives. And when we get home, you can't really expect our team members to go home and upskill themselves. So definitely allow time and space, but also give them guidance. What are the corporate governance? What are the guidelines, like Tash said, mentioned about safe use of AI? Because at the moment, we're trying to run at two pace. Yep, implement the tools, we'll figure out the policies later, but you really can't do that all at the same speed. So go back to basics. How would we do this if it was just a business strategy? Let's go back to the why and purpose, like Huyen said, and what are we trying to achieve? Then overlay time, investment, people, all of those things that are fundamental to our business world for all these years. Doesn't change with AI. I know it's a race to the top, but if you don't do it right, that's where it's all going to fall over. And then finally, put it in people's performance plan and give them something, an incentive. What's in it for me as an individual? Yes, I get paid to do a job, but give me an additional bonus. Why not? I mean, we all get incentivized one way or another. Give me more time off. I don't know what that looks like for you individually, but if you don't incentivize people to use it and just shove it in their face and go use it, I'm like, nah, I'm too busy. I'm trying to do everything. And so I think that's my humble opinion about how to effectively skill up people in the workplace right now.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And I know you touched on this, Alice, but also Tash earlier. So how can female leaders then champion that responsible, ethical, and inclusive AI practices within their own organization? So Alice spoke about headspace and also putting it in, performance reviews and targets. But what do you think, Tash?
So I think in terms of what makes up responsible and ethical, there's a couple of sort of key levers that you need to think about, but there's also probably just a couple of use cases that I can talk to, which it's worth having a conversation with your teams about to see how they would react in those particular circumstances. So maybe if I just start with sort of two stories, and these stories are one which it's been really good in my team to have a conversation around what they would do in those circumstances, what they think about them. The first one was an example, I believe it was from a court in Florida, and they actually brought in AI ruling, and there was still a human in the loop, so there was still a judge who had to come in over the top and say whether or not they thought the ruling was sufficient or not. But they used AI to determine whether or not this person that was sitting in front of them was likely to reoffend. And then based on that, they recommended an appropriate sentence. Now, if you think about the ethics around that, yes, an AI might be impartial to bias, but then on the flip side, is that right to be making decisions based on what someone may or may not do in the future? Should we not be making decisions based on their past? And the other example that we always talk about in our teams is probably one that just came out quite recently, is an example of what Perth's doing at the moment for traffic safety. So they've got AI detection as to whether or not people are wearing seatbelts, and they've issued all these fines to all these people that weren't wearing seatbelts for this AI detection. And the ethical sort of question or discussion off the back of that is, should there be a level of discretion around whether or not someone should get persecuted for something that AI can detect? It's almost like, AI can pick up things before they've even been picked up on. So I use those two examples because it's really good to then start to have a conversation with your team around the ethics of AI around that. And this sort of led us into a bit of a discussion when we started to talk about how we're going to track the use of AI in our company, and also how we're going to track the number of training sessions that people were attending around AI and upskilling. And the decision that we made was that we wanted to track usage. We wanted to see what individuals were using AI and what individuals were using AI for at an aggregated view, so not having access to people's individual chat history or anything like that. But what we didn't want to do is penalize people or reward people based on whether they were or weren't using AI in their day-to-day jobs. We thought everyone's circumstance is a little bit different, and that was an ethical decision that we made. The other thing that we'll do is we'll continue, on sort of a weekly, a fortnightly, a monthly basis, just to have a conversation around different AI news articles that are in the media and say, hey, what do we think about this? Is there something that could have been done differently to prevent this happening? Do we support this decision that has been AI-led or AI-enabled? And so I think it's just understanding what's going on in the world around you, being open to having some of those conversations due to the fast-paced nature of how things are moving. And I don't think the buck just stops with a female leader. I think it's leaders overall, but we need to be very cognizant around some of the biases in AI with groups that are underrepresented, but also making sure that we've got diversity of opinion when making those decisions around when or when not to use AI, particularly if it's going to affect individuals' performance or individuals' outcomes down the track.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that. Thank you, Tash. And this is our last question. So before we go to Q&A, so I will firstly hand over to Alice and Huyen to see if they'd like to add to that. But I just want to encourage everyone, if you do have a question, quickly put it in the chat box and we'll get to that after this. But Alice, Huyen, is there anything that you would like to add to that question?
No, I think that's just great learnings from Natasha sharing as well, and I'm furiously taking notes myself to actually apply for and steal your information, Natasha, for my class, my leadership's class at university. No, not at all, and I'm sure there will be more opportunities for us to share in the future. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. And so one question that we will ask whilst more people put questions in the chat box is, and this is open to anyone on the panel, what structural or cultural barriers still exist for women in AI and how can leaders dismantle them?
That's a tough one. But I think going back to our conversations, I think it is really that still that growth mindset, and also really elevate and incentivize. Again, like I said, perhaps if people are juggling family and work, how do we encourage them to really set aside time to do so? Will be probably where I'd be coming from, because day to day is hard enough as it is. Everyone's got extra stress now with, the economy, the fear of losing their job is at the forefront. So as leaders, as we push the AI agenda, how do we actually go back to being human first for our team members to really help them get through this change? And it is, rightly or wrongly, it's going to be massive change. I don't think we'll ever see another change like this, in my opinion, since the internet. And I grew up using encyclopedias and going to library. And so I feel very fortunate that I'm able to see two massive changes in our lives with technology, internet being one, versus now this AI, which is going to have massive impact that nobody knows really exactly how it's going to play out. So I think going back to that human first would be, I think, breaking down that barrier amongst the pile of noise that we're going through, because we are juggling a lot of balls with business at the moment. So that's my add for that.
I might add a couple of things to Nicola, if we have time.
Yes.
You mentioned in the question about the structures and cultural barriers. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On top of what Alice shared, and I come in with very similar as well, Alice, is structural cultural barriers is within the leader's control. It comes from the top, right? It leader control. I come back to the culture and I come back to the employee experience that we mentioned in our Q&A.
Yeah.
Three things. Connect AI to your purpose. Why do you exist? Why did the organization exist? What the mission? And then design the culture, employee experience. Because employee experience, people comes into work and if they feel part of it, it's natural to come. So design it around AI adoption if that's a path for your organization over the coming years. Celebrate. A great EX removes frictions and creates momentum. And then as a sponsor, don't just mentor. Being a sponsor and when you coach, don't mandate, I would say. Don't come with, well, KPI say you have to go ABC. You don't want it to become a tick box exercise. You want it to be part of the DNA, just part of ways of working. You define your purpose, what problem we're trying to solve, what business values we want to create. How do we get there? AI will be part of it. Again, strategy first, technology after. And AI is your thought partner. It's not a decision maker. You are. That come back to that human element that's Alice you mentioned before.
If I can just add one more point, and I think this is a really sort of interesting discussion, right, around some of the barriers of AI. So I think we've talked a little bit around what are the barriers sort of in the workplace and how you overcome them. But it's probably worth recognizing some of the barriers that exist outside the workplace as well. So I was just having a quick Google to see what the latest numbers are. But the latest numbers are that OpenAI could lose 14 billion in 2026 and become bankrupt by 2027. So OpenAI are repeatedly running at a loss year on year. And they have obviously even open access to some of their tools, which is great. But what's the impact of that as they start charging for AI? Does that then create an equity gap in people that can't afford or don't have the ability to have access to those tools? And then the other side of it as well, and I know there's someone called Joe Devon who's really passionate about accessibility and was part of setting up World Accessibility Awareness Day. And he was saying that a lot of these websites that are now being built using, OpenAI, using Claude, using Gemini, they're not accessible. And so they're actually creating a diversity gap where people with disability can't access websites. So they've gone from using encyclopedias, to use Alice's analogy, like the rest of us, to then people having access to these websites that they couldn't access. I feel like we turned a corner and we started, using accessibility guidelines and making sure that all these things were open access and people with different disability or different needs or different diversity could access them. But then what's the implication around AI if we end up having to charge for these tools, people can't afford them, if we're creating things and forgetting those human first principles around how are people going to access them? And so I think as leaders and leaders of, large companies, we've got the expectation and I think the onus and responsibility on us to also think about how we're enabling community. And when we think about some of those diversity decisions, but also when we think about some of our hiring decisions, don't just hire AI experts, hire human experts who can learn AI through time. And so that's probably just a slightly different angle to what you shared, Nicola.
Thank you so much. That's brilliant. I love hearing that. And also we've got another question in the chat box. I know we're running out of time, so I really want to get to this one because this one's fantastic. It says, as a man working alongside women, some who appear, some who are higher in the hierarchy, some who are lower, what is the most direct way I can support them in the workplace? Who would like to go first for that question? Alice, you look like you've got something on your mind.
I think at the end of the day, that empathy, I really am someone who is very, I guess, encourage everyone to apply empathy, step into their shoes. And often we are an iceberg. I know it's very cliche, but we bring all sorts of stuff to work. But by asking, going back, hey, is there anything I can help you? You seem a bit rattled. You seem you've got lots going on. How can I help you? Just being human. If you see someone on the street needing help, you would. But so applying that in the workplace and asking if people are okay or not is probably the first step. The next thing is take initiative. In my coaching, a lot of people wait for things to happen to them. And I'm talking about mid-level professionals because they feel like, well, it's the leader's job to help me progress my career or help me with my task or help me prioritize. No one is going to stop you from taking initiative. And if they do, you're in the wrong place, right? So I think culturally, if we all encourage everyone, you don't have to be defined by your job description. If you see someone who has a lot going on, then just take the initiative, go, you know what, I'm going to help you solve this problem. Be a problem solver, be solutions focused. All those things have not changed since I started work back in 1999. And that's how you progress in life and in your career. So really just peel back to the basics because I think we get all shiny object, AI, but what is it that makes us a great person to work with? All right, let's not talk about career progression. Let's talk about team collaboration. And I see superior leaders as someone who I can help, then I will go outside my job scope to go help them. And that, as a human, will get you far in life.
Brilliant. Is there anything? Yeah, go, Huyen.
Thanks, Nicola. I also think to thank the audience who posted the questions. I can connect to that personally as well because I was fortunate to work with some great male leaders, and I learned a lot. In fact, one of my coach, my mentors, has been is male leader, and one of the things I noticed that they do consistently is you amplify publicly in meetings women's ideas in the room in the moment. So phrase that I heard the guy say is, I want to come back to what Huyen or Natasha or Ali said about ABC, and it is important, and I think we should consider. Now, it costs you nothing, but it actually means a lot to the person sitting in the room, just being vulnerable, sharing the idea, and waiting for some sort of agreement. And over time, it builds confidence for the person. It's build rapport, trust. You don't have to say, I trust you, or give me whatever. It actually, actions speak louder than words. So by just doing small that, and if you are senior than the other sponsor, right? Sponsor or mentor, that would be, um, if you offer a hand and say, how can I help? You'd be surprised. People would just really appreciate, even though they might not need it right then, but it will come back at some point. So I think some of that natural gesture will actually means a lot to women. And I'm also speaking from also immigrant as well, where it's you want to learn, you learn different culture, you learn different language, you learn different ways of working, some against your how you've been brought up, just different ways of thinking, different muscle. So having that sort of little moments that you go, yep, I'm on the right path, such a significant confidence build over time for women in leadership.
I think the other thing I just want to take up on what you said on sort of amplifying like people's voice, that is so critical. And I think, yeah, coming back to, what this person has said, being able to advocate for people, even just throwing to them in the room. So there's a really good book by Tim Yeo called The Quiet Achiever. And he's got some really tactical strategies in there on what you can do. But one of the things he talks about is, say I've got someone in my team who's a little bit quieter, and the reality is they are often female, they are often English as a second language, and it's terrible that those stereotypes exist, but they do, and we need to be aware of who in our teams just need that little bit of help to elevate their voice. They may not always be the ones speaking in the room, but the really tactical tip that he taught me, which I now use all the time, is I will say, hey, Nicola, I think you'd have a really good opinion on this particular question or this particular point. I'm going to come back to you in a moment, but first, let's hear a bit more from Huyen, who was just talking about X, Y, and Z. And so it actually gives someone who is a little bit quieter or a little bit more introverted, which definitely is a Nicola, but that chance to collect their thoughts and then have the opportunity to share something back. So that's a really good book if anyone does want some of those tactical tips that they can use.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. And I resonate with both of what you're saying. I think it's, not just for people who are a little bit quieter. If you are sitting in a boardroom and you find yourself on the executive team or middle management team and you're the only female there, when a male really does acknowledge what you say, support what you say, and like Tash said, give you that voice, it really helps with the imposter syndrome, is what Tash brought up earlier. It just provides more of that confidence to back yourself when you feel like you're really outnumbered in a board situation or in a management meeting where you find yourself being the only female.
And Nicola, can I just also add, I think to both lovely ladies' point, is that psychological safety. We talk about culture. So there is a culture of, if I voice my opinion, I'm going to get judged. Well, no one's going to say anything. So by encouraging, let's just have an opinion, let's brainstorm and do it together, that might create more psychological safety for those who are a bit quieter or the only female in the room to actually have an opinion. Or sometimes in my previous experience is to actually set really small baby steps or tasks for them to go out and venture out in a safe zone, again, to really help them and support them to build that inner confidence first, is also something that has worked for me as well.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thank you for that question as well. That's excellent. but we are coming to an end. So as we wrap up today's conversation, I just want to take a moment to reflect on some of the themes that have really stood out from today. So we've heard how AI is not just a technology shift, it's really a business shift and it's a leadership shift. It's changing how we make decisions, how teams work, and how organisations build capability for the future. And what's really clear is that the future of work, it will belong to leaders who are curious, like you said before, Alice. You know, curiosity is key when it comes to AI. Those who are curious, but also adaptable and committed to inclusive and responsible innovation. And importantly, ensuring women are part of shaping that future. So a huge thank you to all of you for our panelists. You're all incredible. It was so great to have that diversity in terms of experience, but also answering those questions. So Alice, Huyen and Natasha, thank you for your insights and your practical advice. And thank you to everyone who joined us today, contributed questions and engaged in the discussion. And your participation is what makes these conversations really meaningful. So just to leave you with, just so you're aware, there were a few books that were referenced throughout the answers as well. So what we will do is we'll send an email to everyone post the session, so you know and get to capture those books. Please reach out, like I mentioned, in terms of if you would like a copy of this recording as well, we will share that with you. And at Academy XI, our focus is helping individuals and organisations build the skills and confidence needed to thrive in an AI-driven world. And that really is about AI literacy, but also about those leadership capability and those skills and future-ready skills needed to succeed in our current landscape. So thank you so much to everyone for joining today and celebrating International Women's Day. And I hope you do it every day, like all of our panelists do, not just Huyen, but it's a good reminder. But thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate you being here.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Bye, everyone.
Everybody.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you all.
Bye.
And thanks,
Bye.
Nicola, for hosting.
Bye.
Cheers all.
Bye.